Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard. This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Just like many of the athletes and business leaders we feature on Scoreboard. Hi, it's Chris Titley here today on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast. I'm joined by Ian Williams. Ian, thank you so much for being part of this series.
No, thank you very much for inviting me.
Ian, we're here on the 11th of September on a beautiful Brizzy day. A little bit windy today here in Brizzy, but nonetheless very, very, very beautiful here in September. How's your day been?
Oh, well, the 3 weeks of winter are over, and apart from the second half of a root canal earlier today.
Ian, I want to go back to your early days about rugby and about sport, where the love of sport and rugby came from.
Yeah, look, I was very lucky. My father was an academic, and so I actually born in Canberra, but grew up in Palo Alto at Stanford University, and we were actually lived on campus. So incredible. It's a 110,000 seat stadium that the Stanford American football team played on, and as a young kid, you go and be a bat boy for the Stanford baseball team, which is a Division I. Had all the swimming, basketball. This kind of wasn't anything there, so it was it's an incredibly affluent area, not just the start of Silicon Valley, basically, to Stanford University, but the interest in the facilities. So there was no rugby. I did see some rugby. I used to go down and watch the college players I wanted autographs from, and they'd play rugby on a Sunday after a game. And I kept saying to my dad, "Why are they passing the ball backwards? It's so silly." Yeah.
And so growing up in and around sport, and you mentioned baseball then, was that something that you grew up with?
Yeah, it's every kid in the United States starts with Little League Baseball. So well done on a community. And it's playing catchball and hitting ball, breaking windows. It's part of your rite of passage as a kid in the States.
Ian, I'm curious to know the venture over to Australia and then the interest of rugby when that happened.
Yeah, so Dad got an opportunity to come back and teach at Stanford University, from Stanford at Sydney University. Got back and they just had the soccer sign-ups, and I played a fair bit of soccer in the States. And there was a chance to play for the North Epping Rangers, but I was going to be reserved for Division 8 or 9 or something. And it was serendipitous. We were at Epping Railway Station in the burbs of Sydney, and there's a large gentleman there with a card table, and he's got a sign up for Epping Rams. And Dad sort of says to me, "Do you want to play, Div 9 soccer, or do you want to try this rugby?" We saw a couple of games in the States, and I said, I'll give this rugby a try. The gentleman there happened to be Steve Tyneman's father, great Wallaby number 8, and in that same team was wonderful centre in the mid '80s, Brett Papworth. So from this little Epping Rams club team, ended up 3 of us playing we actually played a couple of tests together, which was pretty amazing.
That is amazing. From one junior club, your first memories of rugby and getting out there as a junior?
Look, I was always little, and so the kid who's little and doesn't know what they're doing, they put him on the wing, and I was always pretty scared. Even most people would say, I was pretty good at avoiding contact. So playing on the wing and running like a scared rabbit, fortuitously, kind of suited my personality and my physical attributes. So I kind of started on the wing and never got any further in.
Yeah, so I was a sort of a former winger in lower grades, etc. in the past, and I was very similar. It's like if they're really big and they're strong, you'd run around them, right?
Well, look, there was a couple of things. First thing was the sideline was your friend. Back in the old days where every line out was like a dockyard brawl, running over the sideline, you had a 50-50 getting the ball back. And the second thing that I always thought was, never make a tackle unless your reputation is on the line. And even then have a pretty good think about it.
And then the training and the skills around playing rugby and continue to play rugby at maybe a school level, but sparking your interest to the point where you're like, this is quite fun and I'm reasonably good at it. When did that sort of come about?
Look, this is in the days of you had a summer and a winter sport. So baseball was always my major sport. There was no real overlap. And, played in the New South Wales under sort of 13s, 15s, 17s, 18s, and then got right through and ended up playing the Australian under 19 team. Went off to the World Championships when I was in high school, and then rugby. Well, you need to do something kind of during winter. But even though when you look on the face of it, rugby and baseball are quite different. If you're playing on the wing, there's a lot of high kicks, and the high kicks actually, being able to kind of run backwards, turn and run, is a bit like playing in baseball. There's a lot of hype, as to play in the outfield. So there was that kind of being able to keep your eye on the ball, run backwards, catch the ball above your head, or get your arms up. And look, I was very lucky in that. Steve Timon went to a different high school, but Brett and I both went to Epping Boys High, one of the, at that stage, one of the really strong government rugby schools. And he was a genius. Like, people up here love Michael Liner and the whole Michael Liner story. And obviously Tom coming through, people are reliving a lot of the genius of Michael. But at that level, Brett was sort of regarded as good or better than Michael. And I just had a simple strategy: just be the one outside Brett. And he had they have tape of him just sort of jinking through and beating 5 or 6 people in All Black tests. That you don't see that kind of stepping these days. The defence is obviously a lot better. And my job was just to hold my pace, wait till Brett had stepped about 5, and get the last pass and zoom in. And so people say, "Oh yeah, that Patworth's a genius. The kid outside him can run." And so
there you go. Good strategy. Smart.
And the good thing is Brett was a lazy trainer. So I was like, I didn't like playing with Timmy Horan because he'd step through 5 or 6 and then run the last 70 metres himself. Brett could only run about 20 metres, and he's looking for someone to finish it off for him.
and then obviously you're well known for your pace and your speed. When did you sort of start feeling like you were faster than the other kids, and how did you train for that?
Yeah, no, I was I wasn't even the fastest at school all the way through, and then I got to about 16 or 17, and I really was short and skinny, and those days you don't have all the food supplements, and there was a couple of lamb chops and
no weight sessions.
Frozen mixed veg all boiled up like we all had, or some sausages and stuff. But I went from not being the fastest at school at sort of 16. And by 17, I was Sydney School's 100, 200, 400 metre long jump champion. So something happened. They would have drug tested you these days. But look, the other thing in rugby is track speed's helpful, but it's actually not it's quite a different speed on a rugby field is quite different from track speed. The track speed will help and inform your rugby speed, but it's that holding of the pace. It's the sort of the ability not to get offside, to hold your depth and then accelerate.
Yeah, and the 100 and 200 and long jump as well would put you in good stead. You remember some of the jumps you made and all the times you ran back then?
I wouldn't, because it's forever ago. But I was going through some old scrapbooks, and there was this yellow newspaper clipping from the Sydney Morning Herald, and I ran 10.83 in the 100. And 21.93, I think, in the 2.
Oh, you broke the 22 barrier, eh?
Yeah. So, these days you look at young Gao, just think it would have been like you're at the starting blocks by the time he's finished. It's
sub 11 seconds. There you go. Like that's in its own right pretty incredible. And then playing rugby and then starting to get picked in some teams, I suppose, and then moving your way up the ranks. Was there a sort of a goal when you're sort of moving up, or that you wanted to play for Australia?
No, look, when you're playing around this kind of the Steve Timons and Brett Patworths, and there was a couple of brothers called the Burke brothers who ended up playing for Australia, Brad and the original Matt Burke, who really truly were geniuses. David Knox, there's a lot of talented, and I just never thought I was anywhere near that level. And it was and when my career sort of ended up in Japan, but when I was last year at high school, the Japan schools toured Australia, and they beat Queensland by about 50. They beat ACT, and they played a game against Sydney, and it was a Sydney. I think it was just a representative team, so they sort of took the kids from year 11 from the year before that had a bit of talent, put them all together. We ended up beating them, not by much. down at Coogee Oval. But I scored 4 tries, and I got a bit of a write up in the paper. And then before too long, I'm in the New South Wales schools team. And you go down to Melbourne, and there's Cameron Lillycrap and Peter Jackson and Greg Martin and all this. Michael was actually injured. Michael Lyon was injured, and I'm in the Australian schools team. So it was like purely, okay, well, there's some trials this week, and then they're picking another team, and so I feel like that sort of the accidental. Went from having no ambition about it to someone saying, "Oh yeah, you should be in. Yeah, you'll make the Australian schools team."
Yeah, right. And then from that sort of, I mean, it wasn't a professional era, so there's a little bit of a difference in era as well, I suppose, from that point of view. But to the point where you got the little bit of self-confidence and belief that you probably could be good enough to play for the Wallabies. Do you remember that moment, the sort of the phone call?
Yeah, look, it was kind of we had. I mean, that sort of it's a long time ago. 81, 82 was undefeated, and it had followed 4 years previous from the undefeated team that had launched Tony Melrose and Wally Lewis and the Melrose brothers and Michael O'Connor and Michael Hawker. This sort of great side. So you're kind of following the footsteps of greatness. But they had that 81, 82 Grand Slam. Well, it wasn't Grand Slam, but potentially the Grand Slam, which was the Wallaby side that had beaten the All Blacks in '79, beat them in '80, had beaten Wales. They had great hopes, and they were a bit unlucky. They had a miserable weather, and Paul McLean was a wonderful goal kicker, kind of missed everything. They scored more tries than everyone else, and they ended up winning one of the 4 tests. And it was, I think, when I chat to those guys, they're probably still in therapy. 40 plus years they couldn't, and so I was seeing them thinking, oh God, how we can do better than that. You can kick the ball and you can run the ball in the wet. So there was a sort of like there's not that much of a gap between us and them. A bit unrealistic at the time.
A bit of self-belief there, and thinking that actually you're good enough to play at the highest level, and then you're making your debut against Argentina. Do you remember? Obviously, there's a bit of YouTube floating around with that, but do you remember the actual day in itself?
Yeah, look, it was within a couple of years, and I missed out on the Grand Slam on the selections, and I was quite disappointed. The tour squads were a lot less, so you tended to take 3, and then the 4th winger is a centre who's always centres tended to be more talented than wingers in the selectors' minds anyway. And I'm sitting up, and it was Brett Patworth's 21st birthday, watching England on the ABC, Gordon Bray calling it, and Brendan Moon breaks his arm, and it was just the moment. It's like, wow, I'm in the standby, and these days you get a text messages within 10 minutes, get your gear together, but it takes a day before I get a phone call, and I'm like, oh my, I'm there. I'm away. The only problem is I was at Sydney Uni Law School. I had to do an exam. I did this exam, failed it miserably, hopped on the plane, couldn't have cared less, headed off to the UK. So I had this sort of run, be part of the Grand Slam Wallabies. That's incredible. And a couple of years later, we have a full tour of New Zealand, beat New Zealand. And I'm on the bench 4 times, 5 times in that period, never get a run on. And it just goes on and on and on. I'm thinking, how many games am I going to play for Australia without actually getting a test? And, these days it's you represent Australia if you're a test reserve or you've been in a Wallaby tour squad. But there was this, it was a big match. You got a cap or you haven't got a cap, and everyone kind of knew it.
And the celebrations and all the things to do with the Wallabies, but being part of them and not actually playing a game, it probably did eat away at you a little bit.
Oh, it was like it felt like you were like a commentator. I was there when we won the Grand Slam, there when we won the Bledisloe Cup, and then people say, "So, what was your role in all that?" And they go, getting some cold drinks for people.
That's right, being the chaperone, maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, incredible era, and probably, other than the 2 World Cups, they're the kind of signature moments in modern rugby for Australia.
So the pent up frustration, you got the call up, right? And you didn't disappoint. How did you feel after your game? I mean, that score in
Yeah,
his first try.
yeah, that was pretty nice. And look, to get I always laugh, the first touch in international rugby, have a try against Argentina, and then years and years later, I'm playing a test for Japan. My last touch in the 78th minute was a try in the corner at Cardiff Arms Park. So I thought the start was terrific, the end was terrific. Don't need to think too much about what happened in between.
There you go. And then like some of the battles, New Zealand, Argentina away. Do you want to describe some of them and the memories that you have from that now? And there's intense battles when we've just gone through one with the Lions, etc., where the level of intensity and competitiveness is extremely high. But
Yeah.
I'd love a bit of a glimpse into your life about what you thought was a good battle, who the good teams were, and some of
Yeah.
the atmospheres.
Look, I mean, rugby is completely different from the 80s, and you kind of people have fond memories of Ballymore. Ballymore probably, I don't know, maybe 15,000, 16,000 at a squeeze. Concord Oval, was the host ground for the first World Cup. It seated maybe 18,000. So that they're not great grounds. So I always I loved when you go to Cardiff Arms Park and they're singing, like that's special. You go to New Zealand and this is a bit of a joke, but the lady serving breakfast will come over and tap one of the test props on the back of the head and say on the shoulder and say, "Hey, just on engagement, you haven't quite got your angle right there," and just the love and the passion. So playing in Wales, playing in New Zealand, I played a couple of tests for a World 15 against the Springboks in the late 80s. That was the single most amazing. They're talking about playing at altitude, but the Springboks hadn't played a test since 1989. Hadn't played a test in 3 years. They had the Cavaliers tour, and then apartheid bans became much more difficult. But this was to celebrate 100 years of South African rugby, sanctioned by the International Rugby Board, so it was kind of in a different category to a national team. International team runs out, and it's a mixture of France, the best of the Lions, the best of Australia. The All Blacks didn't participate. A really good side, and there's this sort of deafening silence, and then it sounds like a jumbo jet has just gone over the stadium, but it was the Springboks running out, and 70,000 mad Springbok fans haven't seen a game and they all want to see the world's best get crushed by the Boks, so that they can. Well, there's no World Cup without South Africa in it, and it sort of reverberated through your whole chest cavity, and you think that is an experience you can't have in Australia. There's just not the passion and the population of rugby people.
Ian, I'm curious to know, you mentioned Japan. Where did that connection come from and how did it come about?
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a path that some of the other Bill Calcraft, Bill Campbell, to take a year out, do some postgraduate study at Oxford. At that stage, playing in the Oxford-Cambridge game, you had sort of half a dozen internationals on either side, 55,000 people watching a varsity match. So, kind of at the same time, we're getting 20,000 to a test match in Australia. And totally by chance, Oxford had a pre-season tour to Japan. And so we finished the domestic test season, flew up to Japan. We played I think 5 games, final match, playing a test match against Japan. And the sort of starting team were Oxford, David Kirk at halfback, World Cup winning captain, Brian Smith, just, current Wallaby, Di Evans had played in the centre for Wales, Malcolm Brown had played for Western Province. Like, it was an unbelievable sort of Oxford team. Played some games there, and the manager of the team was an ex-Kobe Steel employee, and the president of Kobe Steel was a kind of mad rugby guy, and he had this idea that rugby players needed to be intelligent. So the idea of recruiting Wallaby Oxford graduate would bring some promotional benefit that and strengthen the team. And these are in the days we were getting, I don't know, it must have been about £12 a day, English pounds on tour. And by that stage, I was a first-year banking lawyer. I think I was making 27,000 at what's now King & Wood Mallisons, one of the great Australian law firms. And he says to me, "So what are you making?" And I was really embarrassed that I was, only making 27. And I thought, oh, yeah, look, I'll bump it up a bit. So I say 30. He says, yeah, probably honed my negotiation skills a little bit over the years. And he says, I double it. And I went, 60 grand, like 60 grand, that was quite a lot of money. And I said, oh, okay, how about, when I go on a Wallaby tour, I get selected. And he said, oh, that's a business trip. We'll pay you while you're away. And like, it was so bad in the late 80s. We went to France in 1989. Half the team withdrew because they couldn't afford to go financially. The only two players paid, I got paid by Kobe Steele, and Peter Fitzsimons was working at the Sydney Morning Herald, and he was writing some articles while he was away, and he got paid. Every other player took leave without pay, 5 weeks in France, regardless of mortgages and things. So 60 grand playing. I said, oh, I still want to play for the Wallabies. And he said, oh, I'll send you for a business trip to Kobe Steele Australia for the Australian domestic season. So I was like, okay, if this isn't professional rugby, this is. I said, how many games have I got to play? I said, oh, about, if we win through the national championship, you'll probably have 15 games. And I kind of thought, I bet you Wally Lewis isn't making $4,000 a game, and he's the best rugby league player in the world. Let me sign this and work out sometime later whether it's a good idea.
Wow. Okay. Just touching on the amateur era, the professions of the Wallabies, do you remember some of them?
Yeah, there was a sort of mix. A bunch of them were all stockbrokers back in the days where, stockbroking was well remunerated. Bill Campbell's a laser surgeon. Bill Calcraft was an investment banker. Simon Poiterman was in investment banking. Nick Farr-Jones was a solicitor. So, it was again, it was always, you got to get educated, and then rugby is your hobby. And you got to, some of the guys are, the equivalent these days is everyone's in property, every ex-rugby player.
Yes, and the Japanese experience, and then becoming eligible to play for the country. Yeah. How did that come about?
Yeah, so it was the great hidden secret of World Rugby. So as you're saying, 20,000 in an All Blacks test. The same year, the Tokyo Olympic Stadium had 60,000 people at the All Japan final, and regularly had sellouts of games particularly the university games are extremely popular. So it's like, wow, I've stumbled onto this. Financially, it's really attractive. Physically playing against people about the same size, so I felt like I was robust for the first time in my, and I managed to move into outside centre. So that was kind of cool. And the standard was pretty good. So, the Kobe Steele team came out, and, on tours after that, we played Queensland Uni. We beat Queensland Uni when Peter Slattery and Mardo and Cam Lillicrap and Andy McIntyre. So, four Wallabies, beat them down at St. Lucia one night. So it was actually quite good, but just, the world wasn't globalised yet.
Mm. And during that period, you picked up the language?
Look, I did accounting and law, and so I didn't have any aptitude for languages. And you kind of think, oh yeah, I can get by. And then you realise, particularly where I was living in the west of Japan, in Kobe, Osaka area, people can read English well. They've done it all the way through school. No one has ever spent time with native speakers, and the ones who had an ear for American English rather than Australian English. So there's a pretty big incentive, and the side of that I kind of forget is I was living in a 6 tatami mat, and a tatami mat is 1.8 square meters, so a 10.8 square meter room, 600 people, one toilet shared between 25, hot water only at night. No hot water in the mornings. So if you wanted to have a shower or a bath or whatever, that wasn't possible. And rugby training finished at 9, and the in-house cafeteria finished at 9. So you kind of, it's different too. But I had to work every day. And I thought, okay, here's at the time, the second biggest economy in the world. Learning the language, understanding how Japanese companies make decisions, what's the real way in which business is done. It was a kind of really unique opportunity.
Was there a moment there, I suppose, when you were getting paid as a rugby player and then living almost like a backpacker, that you felt like there was a little bit of an oxymoron?
Yeah, I was going to say, if people say you're underliving, there was a bit of that, and I won't say it was like a backpacker because there weren't any nice Scandinavian.
But
Scandinavians.
more so, I'm one of the highest paid non-paid rugby players in the world, and I'm living in a little shoebox.
Yeah, look, it was crazy, and I had some success there. We ended up winning. I think I played 104 games. We won all of them. Like, it was incredible.
Oh
We won
wow! You're like undefeated, literally. You never lost a
yeah,
game.
yeah. So we won 7 championships in the end, and my salary kept sort of going up, and I love baseball, and they had a great story they tell about Babe Ruth, and when he was actually playing for the Red Sox, and they said, how much do you want to get paid? And he says, I want to get paid, and it wasn't $1 million, but at whatever. And they said, that's more than the president. And he said, yeah, I'm playing a bit better than him. I've had a better season.
That's a good
So
question.
I ended up getting, paid very well. And the joke I made about Wally Lewis, I think I don't quite remember the timing, but, obviously superstar at State of Origin, superstar with the Broncos. It's probably Wayne Bennett. He's been around for sort of successful forever. And I think he cut him. And did he go down and play
The
on
Gold
the Gold?
Coast.
But it might have been, the way I remember anyway, Australia's first six-figure rugby league contract.
Yep.
And I literally thought, wow, okay, it's not that much fun living in the dormitory, but this is, Wally Lewis is a genius playing in a pretty elite competition. I'm doing a tenth of that and getting paid very well, and then it set me up financially.
Yes, yeah, and the business relationship between Australia and Japan, you're very well known and very well connected to that. That all came about through that connection with the Kobe Steelers and the president and a few different things. And how was life in Japan during the early 90s from a business point of view and your curiosity, I suppose?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. So my first contract ran for about 16 months, and I didn't understand why a contract would finish on the 15th of January. It's an odd, usually a financial year, a calendar year. It was only later I discovered the 15th of January was the All Japan rugby final.
All
So
right.
if we lost, or they had their option to kind of not extend or chop me. In the first year I was there, we won this game. We thoroughly getting flogged, but we managed to sort of crawl our way back. And you can't say something in the 43rd minute anymore because they record time properly. But the mystery of the old rugby, where how long's the referee? We're in injury time. How long's it got to go? But it was a sort of famous game where I got a sort of 70-metre runaway try in the 43rd minute, and we were behind, and we win 18-16. And I went from thinking this is my last game in Japan, I'm heading home, to being on Japan's equivalent of the Letterman show and Jay Leno and doing these interviews in Japanese. And I thought, okay, wow, okay. The Australian economy has just died, I guess, about October 90. The bubble burst in Australia. The bubble was still going in Japan. It took about another year for it to here I am on the Jay Letterman show. I should just hang in here. And at that point, I just thought, oh, look, I'm just going to play my rugby career out here. And you're harking back to your earlier question. Back when I was at that time, if you were a resident for 3 years in a foreign country, notwithstanding you'd represented another country, you were able to play.
You got the stamp of approval. There you go.
Yeah. So I guess I was about 30 at that stage. Missing international rugby. They said, hey, we've got a tour to Wales. And I thought, wow, test match at Cardiff Arms Park. How good's this? It's a business trip,
Go back to the tax expense.
Yeah, I've got to say, having said that, being in the valleys of Wales in the middle of winter in the pouring rain,
holiday,
it kind of wasn't that much fun. But it was true honour to have a chance to play for another nations. The only embarrassing moment was, though, we were all lined up at Cardiff Arms Park, and the beautiful singing before the game. And I said, now we'll play the national anthems. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And for some reason, I'm thinking, like, that's Australia fair. Yeah, terrific. Got the hand on the heart. And it's they start playing Kimi Gayo, which is this very somber. It's basically an ode to the emperor. So the only time you hear it was in, movies set before or during the Second World War. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is a bit embarrassing. I hope the camera doesn't pick up the fact that I don't know any of the words to this. And I kind of look around and realise, none of the Japanese guys are singing either.
So you didn't mouth something to sort of move your mouth a little bit, kind of. Is he singing? Is he not? Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay, and you played 3 games, is that right?
Yeah, so they had a few tour games and then the one test.
Yep.
And, but sort of get to Cardiff Arms Park, we win the toss, we kick off, Wales knock on, happy days, scrum down. Our scrum goes up like a can of soft drink that's been left on the front of the car. Ball squirts out. Yane Evans, the Welsh captain, scoops it up, runs down the sideline, scores in the corner. Kind of look up and go, oh yeah, 23 seconds gone. We're down 4-0. And at one stage it got to 50-0. And I'm thinking, man, this is a bad day in the office. And but anyway, we got a breakaway, and I got my try in the corner to make it 50-5. And you're getting a flogging when the next day the Times newspaper has a beautiful photo, and it's got the referee putting his arm on my shoulder after I score. And it's like, when you see the under sevens where they've gotten beaten 112, but someone's got the 5, and the ref's sort of giving the kids a pat on the shoulder to say, well done. I thought, yeah, probably shouldn't do this again.
And after 7 years of being undefeated in Japan, you probably weren't used to losing.
It's a different. I mean, the level of rugby in Japan now is sort of unbelievable. But it was on the way. It was starting to get. I guess I went. There was sort of some success there. Other people heard it. So when I got there, I think I was the only kind of all black Wallaby, English, UK. There must be 300 now. Yeah, just every team is full of the world's best players.
And Ian, you've forged a career as a lawyer and moved up, and now a company director on multiple ASX listed companies. The business element obviously was grounded in Japan and here in Australia, etc. And coming back to Australia and then sort of stamping your approval and specialising in a field. Do you want to talk about your career post rugby? Professionalism came in 95 or so.
Yeah.
So you just finished just a couple of years prior to that, and there's a lot of players that finished around that era. But then nowadays, talk about your career post sport and some of the lessons that you learned from playing rugby into where you are now.
Yeah. So I missed professionalism by about a season, and everyone says, "Oh, geez, bad luck." And I think, "Oh no, I played in the best time. Airfares were cheap. You could travel around the world. You chance to study, chance to play."
Chance to get paid lots of money too, yeah.
Yeah, that's never miss a chance to get paid a lot of money for doing something that you quite like anyway. And I knew it would be hard, and I had a sort of a choice of probably move from Kobe Steel, become head coach at one of the other clubs, maybe work in one of their international sort of business divisions. But coaching's a hard gig. You're always going to get sacked. So this week, next week, 3 weeks' time, end of the season. And I kind of thought, oh, well, look, I'm better off going home, and then I've got a little bit of notoriety or recognition in Japan, but I don't have a core skill. I've got education, but I haven't actually got any practical experience. So I went back and I joined there's a big law firm called Ashurst these days, and I was ready for it's going to be pride swallowing every day as you walk in, not knowing how to do anything. But I underestimated how pride swallowing it was. It was so difficult and miserable. And I think a couple of times partners would print stuff out of the people who need to be managed out. I was certainly top of that list. Somehow managed to miss the machete back in those days. But I kept going to Japan, and I could see that, look, Australia has minerals, resources, and energy, and Japan doesn't have any of that. It's the second biggest economy in the world. There's got to be some way of connecting into that. So I'd probably have 250 meetings a year. I do. I used to. I think the most I ever got in was 11 in one day. Have a sort of first breakfast, second breakfast, and then first dinner, second dinner, and catch up with some people for a drink. But I probably saw more people, and it kind of hones your skills. How do you've only got an hour between meetings? Well, not in between, to get to a meeting, a little bit of small chat. How can you bring some ideas? How can you bring some insights, things that you've been working on, things that you've observed? Japan sort of started to come back, and within about 5.5 years, Ashurst made me a partner, which these days is not possible. It's just a much more difficult path. And so I was older, so I was probably in my mid-30s by that stage. So people who were dealing with me thought, oh, this guy's got 12, 13 years experience as a lawyer. I'm thinking, that's a really good question, and I'll have to go back to the office and ask someone who knows something about the law. But it was, working with Japanese trading houses, working with, I had a great run. I did all of Kirin when they bought National Foods and Dairy Farmers and Lion Nathan. I tried to take over Coca-Cola Amatil. And I was just in that sweet spot of I was the only partner at a major Australian law firm that actually worked for a Japanese company. And so that was the kind of pitch of like, I've had the chicken curry rice in the company cafeteria. I've slept in my 10.8 square meter room. I'm one of you. That didn't resonate with everyone. I built a 20-year partnership initially at Ashurst, and then later at Herbert Smith Freehills. And it was very, very good to me. And then later in my career, I had a chance to spend time acting for Australians dealing with Japanese, and kind of half legal, half commercial, half sort of trusted advisor. This is, if you want to do it, this is how it'll play out.
Fantastic. Ian, is there sort of a party trick every now and then when you're talking to a Japanese person, they're talking about rugby, and you say, oh, I play for Japan? And they go, no.
Well, this is bizarre. So, I had about 8 years, I guess, in a Wallaby jersey. Played 44 games. There's, I think two clips on YouTube that someone's kindly put up. By and large, vanished without a footnote. And in Japan, people still reflect fondly on these games that we played in this sort of championship team we had. And the leading broadcaster there is one called NHK. It's like the ABC, but popular, unlike and focused on sport. And they had a program on 100 years of great comebacks in sport, international. So Stephen Bradbury was in it because there was a very famous Japanese speed skater in that final, and so I think he might have medalled. Anyway, they had that, and they had 12 minutes on the miracle try. As the whole build-up, interviews with people, interviews with fans, former, and I can think, wow, 35 years after, or almost 35 years after, people are still enjoying, that kind of. It was a romantic moment to sort of not look like we were losing the champion team, and then sort of pick ourselves off the canvas and somehow sort of get there.
So good. Excellent. While we're on sporting moments, one of the questions I ask my guests is their favourite all-time sporting moment, and I preface this to say that it shouldn't include yourself. Some people talk about themselves because it is such a big moment, but then I also ask them about their sporting moment that doesn't include themselves. Ian, I'm keen to find your all-time favourite sporting moment, something that you can watch over and over again.
Yeah, the one I love was coming back to Sydney. Kind of Sydney Olympics was a sort of special time, and Kathy Freeman being at the stadium, and these tickets were at the time kind of eye-wateringly expensive, but to see sort of Kathy Freeman win that 400, and at the stadium was a bit different. On TV, you had the Bruce McIlvaney call, which was, the master. But actually seeing the stone, think, oh God, she's not going to get there. She's not, she just had that lovely, and she's a small person. Just the speed, and I love track. I wasn't good enough to be, but yeah. And at the end of it, sort of like, oh, that's good.
That relief moment. It was the
Yeah.
like the pressure is like, I've done it.
Yeah, which you didn't see at the stadium, but I just bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
It was such a wonderful, iconic moment.
Now, we also have a partner in Scoreboard, which is Swyftx, Australia's most trusted cryptocurrency platform. They've got over 1.1 million users in Australia and New Zealand. As part of their sponsorship, we have a little segment called The Bucket List, which is the based on their new TVC campaign, Where Can Crypto Take You? The Bucket List is a sporting event that you haven't attended thus far, and you've obviously seen a few, and particularly Kathy Freeman, the Olympics, which is very, very special. But what's one sporting event that you haven't seen yet that you'd love to attend?
I still, I love my rugby, but baseball's the real sport for me. I would love to go to the All-Star game and get there early, watch the home run derby, and just see the greatest baseballers in the world all together in one. It's the only game you get to see everyone.
Wow, that's the first baseball. I've had a couple of NCAA college basketball, the final. The March Madness. Had a few guests that wanted to go to the NBA finals, but the baseball, you were first, and obviously represented Australia baseball as well. There's a bit of love there, and with the Japanese heritage. Now, this is a new segment that I'm introducing. It's a little bit of fun. It's based on rugby, which is your background, but also in business and business and sport in this podcast. But I've got 5 rugby trivia questions, which I think the listeners might want to join in for their answers as well. But we'll see how your rugby knowledge is in. Are you ready to rock and roll for some rugby trivia? First question is, how many Rugby World Cups have New Zealand won?
3.
Correct. You know the years?
Oh golly, let's see. 87, of course. Yep. And then they must have won 2011, 2015.
Jackpot. 1 from 1. You're on fire.
Right.
This one's a bit of an easy one for you in your era. Which country hosted the first World Cup in 1987 / countries?
Oh, yeah, Australia, New Zealand.
Yep. And New Zealand had the final. So New Zealand. Well
and
done.
Third place.
2. Who is, number 3, who is the all-time leading try scorer in Rugby World Cup history? It's a multiple choice question. A, it's a tie between Jonah Lomu and Brian Habana. B, Tim Horan from Australia. C, Jason Robinson, England.
A
is correct. Jonah Lomu and Brian Habana, 15 tries each in World Cup history. Question number 4. You're 3 from 3. You're going well, by the way. Question number 4. Which Australian kicker slotted a penalty goal on full time to send the 2003 Rugby World Cup final into extra time against England?
Sterling Mortlock.
Incorrect. Elton Flatley.
Oh, Flatley. Oh, yeah, it was too.
And then into extra time, I believe it was 14 all at the extra time, and then it was 17. It was 20 to 17 in the end. But there was a penalty in extra time as well. But Elton Flatley was the answer. 3 from 4. That's okay. We got the last one. The Bledisloe Cup is the traditional rugby series between Australia and New Zealand. It is named after A, a person, B, a place, C, a material, or D, a ship.
A, it's a person. It was Lord Bledisloe.
Lord Bledisloe, Governor General of New Zealand. Correct, Ian. Well done. 4 out of 5. Not bad.
Oh, God. I was at the game too. The 2003.
The Donnie Wilkinson. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, we've got a little segment called the Scoreboard Moment, which is a moment in your life which is very vivid. It's like a Kodak moment. And from that moment, life changed. Ian, I'm keen to know what your scoreboard moment is.
Look at probably the miracle try. Without that, I probably would have been back here doing conveyancing at some law firm. And that changed the whole trajectory of life. Suddenly there's this opportunity in Japan. There's various things. Brendan Moon's broken arm. But the miracle try was there's this bit like REM when they had before was it Finding My
Religion.
It was before that and after that.
There you go. Wow. Ian, one final question I've got out there. What's some advice you can give to people, maybe some teenagers actually, that want to play professional sport?
Yeah. Well, look, it all comes to an end. It's not a sport that you can, I think realistically sort of 30. So it's got to be, a profession, a trade, something plus rugby. And I think the challenge with, society seems to be how's your resilience? How do you keep sane? How do you stop having melancholy and affecting it all, and having other things, that's so you have balance in your life. And the one thing I'd probably, I do get asked occasionally, having good people around you, some mentors. I've had some good business mentors. Probably wish I had better mentors in rugby. I think I could have been a much better player.
Interesting. And the people the support crew around you have helped you, with the tough times?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the problem everyone pats you on the head and says, you'll be fine. But often the things that have really stuck with me is someone I know, but not particularly well. It might be just an insight. And there was one. I got dropped. I was always getting dropped from New South Wales. Every time New South Wales lost the game, they drop a hooker, a second rower, and a winger. They had to make some changes, and I think it was in between. Sort of slightly out of favour. And there was a famous Australian coach called Dave Brockoff, who was using his own language, as mad as a cut snake. It was when he'd been there like sharks in muddy water, dockyard brawl. Had all this great. And I don't think he knew anything. He was a forward himself, and he was more of a motivator than a technical guy. And I was feeling a bit miserable after one of the games, and he came up to me and goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, they just dropped me. They say I can't make head-on tackles, and 75 kilos. I'm not going to make too many head-on tackles. And he said, "Forget about all that. Don't listen to that." He says, "When I see you play, when the ball comes in your hands, I want you to be lightning. I just want you to pin your ears back and do what you do best." And it actually changed my whole thing. Instead of worrying about what I wasn't particularly good at and really was probably never going to be that good at. So it's just a small example of sometimes people can bring an insight that people close to you can't get, and you certainly can't get yourself. And it's maybe obvious, but you can hear it sometimes better. So it's good to have a range of people around you.
That's a really good answer. Like the bit of an outside perspective every now and then always helps. Some good advice to finish. Ian Williams, thank you so much for being on Scoreboard, the podcast today, to share your journey from the US to Australia, to Japan, back to Australia, and the impact that you're making now with the Australian-Japanese business community on the boards that you sit on. Congratulations on your career, and a bit of storytelling there with all the rugby stories during the 80s and early 90s. And congratulations on your successes thus far, and all the best, and looking forward to support where I can.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to share some stories from the Jurassic period.